Welcome. A few classes have read the book Ground Zero, but for those who haven't, here's how it played out.
In Ground Zero, we read about two kids, Rashmina and Brandon, who both have a serious situation to tackle.
Brandon's side of the story takes place on 9/11 in the North Twin Tower. Brandon has to try and escape out of the building before it collapses, but also help his dad escape too. Along the way, he meets people, but one person, Richard, helps Brandon the most.
Rashmina's story takes place in Afghanistan, where war is surging between the Taliban and the Americans. Rashmina is struggling to keep her twin brother Passoon from joining the Taliban. Rashmina also houses a wounded soldier named Taz, but has to hide him because the Taliban will be mad that they are housing him. Did Rashmina just endanger her whole village? Along the way, Rashmina meets people, but the person who she likes the best is either Miriam, the translator, or Taz, the wounded soldier.
After reading this book, we felt the need to honor the veterans who have recently served in the Afghanistan war.
After brainstorming, we decided to interview veterans who have served recently and put responses into the video you're about to see.
Enjoy!
Well, at the time that I graduated high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So, by joining the Army and what I think or thought I wanted to do, I not only got some really great experiences, but the Army also helped me pay for my college degree. So, I got my entire bachelor's degree completely paid for by the Army, which was huge because then I didn't have to start off with any college debt.
I joined the military in 1999, so I served before 9/11, and I honestly just joined because I wanted to serve my country. No other reason than that.
So I had a grandfather that was in. I also had a grandfather on the other side of my family that was in the Army, both of them during World War II. Our grandfather that we shared together never got deployed to any of the combat zones, but my other grandfather did. He was in the European theater. I have pictures of him in Paris, France during World War II, which is really neat. So that was a big motivator. I had another cousin that we have that joined at the same time as him, joined the Marine Corps as well. And then we have a great uncle also that was in the Marine Corps. So that was a big deciding factor for me to join specifically the Marine Corps. And then several friends through high school that ended up going before I did because like I said earlier, went to college first. So it was just a whole lot of people that were important in my life that motivated me to do it.
So for me, also the people in the family that were already in, my dad that's going to be here soon. He was in the Army National Guard, and then if I'm being completely honest, the thing for me was when I was 18, I needed something to get me going in the right direction. So, and college probably wasn't going to be for me. So I made the decision to join the Navy. It was a little different for me. I wanted to travel, so I wanted to see the world, and that was one way to do that and get paid to do it. So, so that was a deciding factor for me is travel, and I knew I wanted to be on an aircraft carrier. I did not want to be in a submarine, so I wanted to be able to see the outside when we were gone. So that was important as well. But yeah, so family and getting going in the right direction.
Like my grandpa, he was in the Army, and so looked up to him a lot and just followed his path.
So what motivated me was that, everyone, especially because I am very short, I'm about 4'9", they tell me that I can't do what I want to do, right? So I had to prove that I can do what everyone else can do. So that's what I did.
The motivation to join the Army was again to sort of pursue that discipline, and also to get college money, and also to sort of give me some direction from there. I knew I could branch off from that and go a lot of different directions. I kind of had a good feeling that the Army was a good start and also a good career if you decided to make it a good career. And so that was my primary motivation. I noticed you guys have a book over here that's all about 9/11. I'm sure you guys have heard of 9/11. You weren't there when it happened, right? Or you weren't around when it happened. But when that did happen, that inspired a lot of other people, and that's their primary motivation. But my motivations very soon became that. It became to serve the country and to give back to the country that has treated me so well and given me all the freedoms and blessings that I have in my life.
So I really wanted to go to college, and I grew up in a house that did not have a lot of money, and my mom and dad did not go to college. So I knew for me to be able to do that, I would have to find a way to pay for it. And having that recruiter come to my high school, I was able to find out that if I joined, I could get my college paid for. So I did.
So I joined the military because I wanted since you guys were at Ground Zero, I'm sure you're learning a lot about 9/11. We just went through that about a month ago. So I was in 10th grade when 9/11 happened. So that was really impactful for me to have to watch our country go through that. I wanted to do my part to help. But also, I knew that I wanted to be a police officer after high school. So I knew that that would help with the training to become a police officer. And also, if I wanted to finish college, the military in the United States helps pay for that.
Age myself a little bit. I was in high school when the September 11th attacks happened, and I wanted to join the military right after high school, but my parents were kind of afraid, because the war in Iraq at that time was going on. So my parents were trying to talk me out of it. And they said, well, we'll pay for college. College is really expensive. And they agreed to pay for college if I decided to do that instead of joining the military. So I said, okay, I'll give college a shot. I was not the typical person who enlists in the military. I was 26 when I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps, which is the cutoff. So I graduated college, and then I got a job, and I just felt like there was something missing from my life. And it was getting at that age where if I didn't do it now, then like I'd be past the cutoff and I'd never be able to. And I didn't want to live with regrets. I didn't want to be like, man, that's something I wish I would have done when I was younger. So I said, you know what? I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna decide to enlist when I was 26, and it was a good decision for me.
Mostly my friend, my family. School was a big thing. It was what gave me the opportunity to be able to go to college to get a higher degree in education. So that was, and the benefits is also very lovely and supports me and my family.
Chose to go into the Army, and I wanted to join the Army because they had a really good program for people who wanted to go into the medical field. So I went into the Army as a medic and did that for about 6 years.
The Navy, and real simple, just it was the best one to see the world. It's all in your place on the map pretty much.
When I started, I chose the Army National Guard. With the Guard, you actually are part-time, so I got to stay home, and I only did drill 1 weekend a month, so I would play Army for about a weekend. But now I am currently active duty, and I do this full-time. I'm an Army recruiter, so I put people in the Army now.
I was very lucky in the fact that when I was in high school, we had recruiters come to our high school and try to recruit us for when we graduated. And the only branch that showed up was Air Force because we were close to an Air National Guard base. And that is why I chose it, though I am very thankful. And
I served in the United States Marine Corps. I decided to serve. Why in the Marine Corps? That's a good question. I have a couple uncles who served in the Marine Corps, and they did not have great experiences. They served in like a different era, and there's just different stuff going on during that time. So I was talking to Army recruiters when I was in high school, and I don't know, the Army's just kind of like the biggest brand, and that's like what I thought I wanted to do. I had an uncle who served in the Army too, so I got different veterans from different branches in my family, and ultimately, I decided to join the Marines because I wanted a challenge, and I knew it. They had the highest standards. It was the toughest physical test, the hardest like marksman tests and things like that. And I'm the type of person that if I'm going to do it, I want to go all out and be the best. And so that's why I decided to choose the Marine Corps over other branches.
I chose the Army just because it was the biggest branch and it had the job that I wanted to do.
Army National Guard when I was 17 years old. And I joined because one of my friends joined and he wore the uniform to school. And I thought it'd be a cool thing to do and wanted to be like him. And that's honestly all it took for me to join.
I chose the Army because when I walked into the Air Force recruiter's office, he kind of looked at me like I wasn't smart enough to join the Air Force. But needless to say, I probably was. I was probably just trying to pick the wrong job. I wanted to work on their jet engines, which is a very complicated process for somebody who's only had auto mechanic training. But the Army, they're looking for all kinds of people. The Marines are looking for even more all kinds of people. So it kind of just depends on what branch you want to pursue as to what kind of jobs you can get and that sort of thing. For me, when I entered the Army, I chose the Army because it had an occupation that allowed me to only do 2 to 3 years, which is a petroleum supply specialist. And that's basically issuing fuel, so I did that for 3 years. And I'd issue fuel to Black Hawks and helicopters and all kinds of really cool equipment. That's what I did for a while.
So I was in the Marine Corps, and I chose that branch because I wanted to be an infantry guy. And almost everybody in the Marine Corps is an infantry person. So all the different branches do different things, as hopefully you guys know. So the Navy does the ships on the ocean. The Air Force does basically everything in the air. The Army is kind of like the big one. That was the first one. And they do a little bit of everything. And then the Marine Corps is kind of like the fourth one. And they were there to support the Navy side, but didn't necessarily want to be Navy people. They wanted to do the fighting, but only on the ships. So then they would get off the ships and go onto land. So that's why I liked the Marine Corps, also because they had the coolest uniforms.
I'll go first. I joined the Marine Corps. Again, before you got here, I kind of mentioned that I had friends and family. You never met your great Uncle Johnny, great to you. But he was in the Marine Corps. And then close friends, cousin, Caleb, you know Caleb. He was in the Marine Corps too. So for me, it was really just, no offense guys, but wanting to be in the best. The Marine Corps is touted as being kind of the harder one.
Touted.
Doesn't necessarily mean it is. There are aspects of it that might be tougher, but then each one of their services had other obstacles that I didn't have to go through as well. So they're all just as difficult and just as rewarding.
For me, like I mentioned earlier, I joined the Navy because of being able to, I wanted to travel, I wanted to see the world, and wanted to get out of Indiana. Wanted to get out of Wells County. So that's what I did.
I joined the Indiana National Guard, and then I joined it because, like I said before, because it had several challenges for you to do skilled jobs like mechanics, truck drivers, and I said, let's try one, see if we like it. And I've been a truck driver ever since, so I liked it, and it worked out. So mine was, I did several different things to get my 23 years in. So I started out as an infantryman, which was a lot of combat training, running, military weapons, first aid, repelling, all kinds of stuff like that. So you learn all that. Yeah.
So in the Navy, and I believe it's still this way, our basic training, because we're not as tough as these two guys, they think. So our basic training is only 8 weeks. So we do, and it's in Great Lakes, Illinois, so up by Michigan there. So, so we do 8 weeks training, a lot of running, push-ups, sit-ups, learning safety, learning how to do certain general functions on a ship, and then once you get done with the 8 week training, then you go to what they call A school or tech school. So that would be your school for whatever job that you're going to have. So for me, I was an aviation boatswain's mate equipment. So what I did was I did launch and recovery off an aircraft carrier. So then after I went to boot camp, I went to Pensacola, Florida, and spent another 8 weeks down there learning my job and being trained to go there. And then upon a graduation, you get to go home for leave and then go to wherever your ship's at. So that was a little bit, and then training, more and more as you get just like a job or qualification, trying to get qualified to do certain things. So
Marine Corps training is 13 weeks long for initial boot camp. After that, you go to a School of Infantry or Marine Combat Training for another 6 weeks, 6.5 weeks. And then after that, you go to your actual job training. So I was there for 3 months also. So I've overall about 10 to 12 months of just training before I got to my fleet unit. After I got there, you're always training. So you're always preparing for whatever the next mission might be. So you don't know at the time if you're going to the desert or to the wilderness. So you're focused on different things to try to be well-rounded. And so it's always ongoing training. Once you get to your unit, you're going to requalify on your rifle. You're going to go to the gas chamber. You're going to do swim qualifications. Those are all annual. And then you're always running, like they both said, sit-ups, pull-ups, team exercises. So you're working with small groups to perform difficult tasks to keep yourselves agile and quick-minded. And so yeah, it's just, you're always training. It doesn't matter what service is. There's always something that you're freshening up on or getting prepared to do. And your mission changes as the climate, I'd say that climate and not weather, but like the political, the way things, the communication between other countries and stuff. So that changes what your focus may be. So your training is always changing.
For me, it was a little tough, but it was fun. You have people obviously in your face. You've seen it in the movies, probably yelling at you and all that. But the physical aspect was pretty tough, obviously, because I'm so tiny. But in the end, you just have fun with it.
Military training, well, out of the gate, was very difficult on my body. Okay, so initially, as a basic trainee in basic combat training, I'm sure you guys have all heard of that. That's 8 grueling weeks of very physically intense training. It was hard on my body, but I was only 18. So I was fresh out of high school and I could handle that. If I was asked to do that again, I'd probably go ahead and hang up my boots. But that, along with AIT, which AIT is additional individual training, what that does is it puts you through sort of the schoolhouse training that you need to be able to do your job. So believe it or not, pumping gas isn't as easy as it seems. When you're talking about bulk fuel, and you're talking about fueling aircraft and tanks and doing all that stuff safely. That's about an 8-week course that I had to do in Virginia. So that was the very next move that I made. And then I went and learned how to drive trucks, because you can't issue fuel if you can't drive the truck to the fuel truck to the place where you need to issue the fuel. So that was my training out of the gate. Now, military training since then has been a lot more up here. Okay, a lot more mind intensive. It's management of resources. It's management of human resources along with equipment, and so that's more what that's like now, and the military decision-making process and all those intricacies. So,
yeah. At first, boot camp was a little struggling. I joined when I was older, so a lot of people joined right out of high school. I was about 8 years older than everybody, so that was a pretty big change. What I did in the military was, I'm a level 2 coxswain, so I drive high security boats, escort high value assets into foreign ports, like nukes and big aircraft carriers. So that training was
fun but challenging. Got to drive a boat really fast.
So basic training for the Air Force is 7 to 8 weeks long, and it's a lot of mental training where they teach you to be mentally strong and to rely on each other to be part of a team. And there was some physical work, running and exercise like that after basic training. Then I had to have my technical training. So when I first signed up when I was 17 years old, it was to be a bomb loader. And it took 3 months in Texas to learn how to load bombs. And then after that, we would just have exercises every year, playing war basically.
Everybody's different and everybody has to find their own way. And the job that I do now as an adult is one that most people have a college degree to do. But I say that I got my training and learned so much about how to be a contributing member of society from my time in the military. I wasn't going to handle college very well. I tried college and I was really bad at it. But when I went to the military, it turned out I was really good at that because the military told me everything. They told me what time to get dressed and how to get dressed and when to brush your teeth and how long to brush your teeth. So it gets that basic where it's like, I just gotta do my job and that's learn. And it was a lot of fun and really easy, it felt like, because of that.
I did my basic training, which is 9 weeks, where you have to really work hard to be able to do everything physically that the Army needs you to be able to do. So we did a lot of running and a lot of push-ups. And we also learned how to do things that would be helpful. So we learned how to work together as a team and how to problem solve and how to work together as one unit. That way, when we got to overseas, we already had those skills that we needed to be successful. So that was my basic training. And the other big part of basic training was learning how to eat right. Before you can physically get to a place like that, to where you're physically fit and able to do all the things you need to do, your body needs to have the proper nutrition. So eating all of your greens and your vegetables and healthy proteins and all of those things that your body needs. So then after that, I went to my advanced training, and that was about 4 months long, where I got more specific training on how to be a medic. So similar to like a first responder or an EMT, I went through and learned all sorts of medical things that I would need to know to be able to help other soldiers and sailors and airmen if they were to get injured. And then after that is when I went to my duty station and actually got to put those skills to use.
It was pretty hard. The basic training, it was very gruesome. It was a lot of older people yelling at you and crawling in the dirt, but you gotta do a lot of cool things. Gotta go on a lot of hikes and do a lot of cool Army stuff and blow things up and shoot big guns, and so it was pretty cool.
Well, my job in the Army was ammunition, so everybody that needed their bullets and their bombs and their rockets and everything like that, they came to me to get them. And so my training was actually quite fun because I got to learn how to shoot a lot of really kind of interesting weapons, and I learned how to blow stuff up, I guess. Can I say that?
Yeah, that's reality.
So I mean, it was really pretty darn fun. It's things that you guys might not ever get the opportunity to do, and you probably should never do.
My training was really long. So like you go to boot camp first, or in the Marine Corps we call it boot camp, and it's the longest boot camp of any of the branches. So I was there and we learned how to drill a lot. There was a lot more drilling, not like power tool drills, but like if you're in marching band or you've seen bands perform and they march with instruments, and you like kind of learn to march and turn and pivot at the right time. And I wasn't really into that, to be honest with you. I didn't think we'd be doing a whole lot of that kind of stuff. But then we got to go outside. We got to like hike up mountains and stuff. And We did weapons training. I drove different vehicles, stuff like that. And then after boot camp, you go to, it's called combat training. It's more like outside, like field style training. So you do a lot of hiking there, and you learn to work with different equipment, different radios, things like that. And then after all that's done, and then you go to your school for your actual job. And I was an intelligence analyst, so I went down to Pensacola, Florida for my school. And I was there for 3 months. I did other training like before my deployments. You go out into like, there's a training ground out in California. It's kind of like just in the middle of the desert. So it's kind of like you're getting used to or getting ready for a deployment. I did 2 of those. You're out there for a month at a time, and you just practice doing basically everything you're going to do when you're deployed. You just practice doing your job, and you learn how to work with other units and other people and stuff like that. A lot of training though.
Well, I did in my 6 years, I spent 2 of those 6 years overseas in Afghanistan. And their customs are very, very different from ours. And I think we really take for granted some of the freedoms that we have being here in the United States. Over in Afghanistan, a lot of the children don't go to school. They don't have schools in a lot of the different parts of the country because they're very, very poor. Some areas of the country, the women have to wear coverings over their heads and their faces, so you never really get to see anybody outside of just their eyes. Women and children don't talk, especially to strangers. So that's very different from being back here. You know, we have the ability to have a conversation with whoever we want to, and we can look them in the eyes and see their smiles and their frowns and all of the other expressions that they have when you're having a conversation. So those were probably some of the biggest challenges. Like anywhere, there are good people, but there are also a lot of really bad people. So being in a place like that, you just had to be really careful about who you trusted because you never knew who was a good guy and who was a bad guy.
So I have actually mostly served within our country, so I haven't really gone outside. I have went on one deployment to Iraq, and basically the women are completely covered. You only get to see their eyes. The men, they basically are, normal men out there wearing the same clothes that we do. But obviously they have like a different language and stuff like that.
Another big question. So I've deployed on 3 different occasions. I've been to Kuwait on 2 of those, and I've been to Iraq. So my experience has been, deployment-wise and dealing with various cultures, has really been mainly with the people of the Middle East. Okay, and so with that comes a very big change in religion. For most people, we have all various kinds of religion. We like to say we have freedom of religion in America, which I think is a really good way to go about it. They're a little less freedom of religion oriented in that part of the world. Not to say that that's the wrong thing, but that's what they do. So, sort of, if you're not into the Muslim culture and that sort of thing, and those religions of Islam, then you're sort of an outcast and treated a little differently, unfortunately. But that's something that you kind of have to get used to, because it may not be our way, we may not think that's right, but for them, that's what they think is right, okay? And so you have to sort of respect some of the things and the ways that they treat others, and their value for people and animals and all that stuff kind of changes a little bit. And it's difficult to explain because it's different from culture to culture. There's various cultures within those. Saudi Arabia is very conservative, old school, versus if you go to Qatar, another country that's in that region, they're a lot more like us. They're not like us, but they're a lot more close, like more liberal like us.
So I was deployed in Kuwait, Iraq, and Syria. So I deployed in all 3 of those countries, and it's very different from there to here. From just how they speak, their language, the language barrier was very different. Just trying to understand and communicate with them. But then, of course, how they interact with their own people and how they interact with you is also very different. A lot of them were friendly, some of them were not so friendly, but for the most part, it was they're a good culture once you get to know them. None of them did not show that they disliked us, but so they were friendly for the most part. But as a culture wise, it was cool to see how they cultivated their land and see how they raised their animals, like the camels and everything. The camels up close are very huge and very cute.
I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2014, and Afghanistan is a primarily Muslim country, and I was there during the holy month of Ramadan, which was an interesting experience. I worked very closely with native speakers, so people who were born in Afghanistan but then became U.S. citizens, and then they got a job working for the government, being like translators essentially, since they already spoke the language and knew the customs and stuff. And they were practicing Muslims. So during Ramadan, we one thing, Muslims are not supposed to like eat or drink. They're supposed to fast during the day during Ramadan. And so out of courtesy, we would not like eat meals or drink in front of them because we wanted to be respectful of them and you know, not like kind of mock them for practicing their religion or anything. So that was one big cultural change, was the religious aspects of when I was in Afghanistan. I think that's probably the biggest one.
Lots of places: Guam, Spain, San Diego, Virginia, Bahrain, Italy.
I did a peacekeeping mission to Kosovo. That was the first time I left the country. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kosovo. There were two religious groups that were fighting each other, and they killed a lot of people. And so I went over there and I just saw like how poorly they lived. Like most of these buildings were bombed out, and I don't recall ever seeing a single building that had windows. They had the buildings themselves but no windows. So in the middle of the winter in the mountains, it was hard for them to heat their homes. When we'd go to meet these people, they'd offer us coffee and little biscuits, and it was kind of offensive to not drink the horrible coffee. Afghanistan was very different. I think the biggest thing for me is that there were no women that I saw the entire time that I was there. I was there for 1 year, and I didn't see a single woman the entire time. Women are treated vastly differently in Afghanistan. Well, at least when I was there, because I was there in 2003 to 2004. So just the way that women and young girls were treated is phenomenally different than how you guys would be treated.
Every stop along the way was different, but some of the things they, like, for instance, out on the streets in Singapore, in the town there, they are very strict about chewing gum, and you're not allowed to chew it outside on the streets. And then if they see that, and if they see you throwing it on the ground, then there's a discipline for that. And if I remember correctly, I believe it wasn't just a fine; it was a whipping. Like, you would get a whip for spitting your gum out on the ground. so that's a different custom that, you know, you would not. How would you react to that here in the United States, right? So that's one thing. But so those things like that, just different things you experience overseas.
So I've been to 10 countries now. Having served, I only did 4 years, so it's a lot of traveling for some of you that are interested in that. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan, which their customs are very similar. They're very familial, so everything is very small groups, and they're always pretty much related to everybody that they associate with all the time, except for when doing business and stuff. But waving with the right hand, because in the Middle Eastern cultures, They consider one hand dirty, one hand clean. So if you wave with the dirty hand, they take it as a sign of disrespect. So you got to be really careful with certain types of the culture. He mentioned chewing gum in Singapore. I've been to Qatar, which is off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. It's a little peninsula, and there, if you spit on the ground, you actually go to jail. Instead of getting a fine, they'll actually just take you to jail. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you commit an offense, you pay the price. So you definitely always take the time to learn a little bit about the culture before you get there. I didn't get to go to too many other places aside from airports in like Ireland and Germany, which are more similar to our culture. So.
Well, I can remember, so I'd say it's going on right now, it's like in Iran, where the ladies gotta wear their head covers. So I was in, I think it was Kuwait somewhere, and they say that the ladies gotta have their head covered and you're not supposed to look at them in the eyes for some reason. I just thought that was kind of different. Yeah.
Was a big motivator for me to keep going, especially when I was overseas. I had a lot of really dark and down days in Afghanistan because it's a hard place to be. A lot of different things happen all the time, but my family was a huge supporter. My grandfather served in the military, Anna and Noah's grandfather. So their great grandfather, rather. He was a big motivator for me because anytime I thought about quitting or giving up or felt really down on myself, I thought about my grandpa and how he was able to do it. And he was so proud of me, and my parents were so proud of me. And I joined the military not necessarily for me, but also for my family and for my friends. I wanted to give them a gift that not everybody is able to give. And that's a gift of, fighting for our freedoms that we have and that we take advantage of every day. So that really motivated me is that
Probably the family.
I think my work ethic actually inspired me because I'm a very hard worker. So when things get tough, I try to, persevere and push through. But as of right now, what keeps me going, because I'm still in the Army, is my 2 baby boys. I wake up every day and to make them proud of me.
Oh, that's a good one. So when I enlisted at 17, I had to be in, I basically signed a contract saying that I would be in the military for 6 years to be able to get college paid for. Towards the end of that 6 years, I decided to sign back up for another 6 years because I enjoyed it and thought I might make a career out of it. So about halfway through that second 6 years, maybe around, well, we'll say around year 8, I really did not enjoy it for just different reasons. Decided to stay in it. I would say it would be my love for our country and just the sense of feeling like you belong and you have a purpose, and you became very patriotic being in the military. So I loved truly being a part of the United States Air Force and military, and that kind of just kept me going until I retired.
Honestly, it was a family, and I'm not sure if it was y'all, but it was one of Lexi's, which is one of the students. She is my cousin. She also, her class sent me letters during Christmas and stuff, and that helped me out a lot and kept me going and kept me knowing that there was family and friends here that was supporting me.
Well, that's a good question. There have been hard times, but not many because I've loved most of what I do for so long. There's a few times where I was not liking what I was doing, but I was deployed and I didn't have much of an option to stop doing what I was doing. And so I kept doing what I was doing. And those are hard times when you're away from your family and you're making those sacrifices. military member just about goes through that. And those are tough times, and you kind of just at times want to step away and step back. Another time is when we talked about that combat training, that initial basic combat training that we go through. I kind of wanted to quit in that moment too, because I couldn't find any adults, because I was 18, all of us were like 18 to 24, but I couldn't find any of these professionals that called themselves drill sergeants who were very nice to me. And I didn't like that. I couldn't understand that, because I was trying my best, but they were still mean to me. And that's because they're trying to instill discipline. I see that now, but I didn't necessarily see that then. One of the things that inspired me to keep going was to think of some people. I sort of started thinking of people that had treated me really good in my life. And I drew back on that, and I knew that that world existed, and I wanted to get back to it. And I knew that if I pushed through this now, I'd be able to get back and be with them anyway, and eventually I did. So I think that was probably what motivated me to get through it the most.
Great question. Great question. So through the tough times, I say that the toughest time, there was 2 times that was really hard through my time in the service. Boot camp would be one, just because it's a shock to you, because it's completely new to everything that you've been doing or that you've been taught to do. Just knowing the end goal, knowing that the reward that's going to come after fighting through everything in boot camp and being away from your parents and your friends, and then being able to see them again was kind of what kept me moving towards that goal. And then the second one would be when we were out on our deployment, and that was when, which you may have some questions about this here in a little bit, but that was when the war first started. We had been gone for 6 months already, and we turned around to go back when the war started for another 3 months. And just the purpose of what we were doing in defending our country was what kept me moving through that. So
for me, boot camp is a complete shock. You're in a foreign place, you're with people you don't know, and you're getting yelled at a lot. Don't let that scare you if anybody's thinking about it, because what it does is it teaches you how to be confident in yourself, so that when tough times like that come about, you take a step back and you kind of process everything, and you learn what you need to do to be able to get to the next step in your life. So boot camp is huge for teaching you that, and even school. So you have a big assignment, you get exhausted, you don't feel like you want to finish it, but you do, right? And then you get that reward at the end. So that's another thing, a motivator. And then, like you said, when you're deployed, it's talking to your families, your close friends, just communication. So without communication with your family and your friends, it gets kind of lonely. But fortunately, we're in a time period where technology is so fast that we can talk to people all the time. So you have the internet. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, we had satellite phones, so I could just make a phone call home, which was really kind of unique in our time period. Like, he's way older, he probably didn't have that access. But he's been over there too, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about. But those are huge motivators for getting through tough times.
In the military, they don't really allow you to just quit at things. You really don't have that option. You kind of are punished for quitting, and it's not really an honorable thing to do. So I think the honor is just honestly the biggest thing, that you don't want to fail yourself, and you don't want to fail your soldiers and your superiors. You don't want to fail your unit.
When those times get really hard, what we were taught and what you learn on your own when you're in those experiences is that the only people that can get you through that are people that are going through it with you together. And no matter how hard something feels, no matter how difficult it seems it's going to be to get through that, if you look hard enough, there's always somebody else that's going through it too. But in the military, it's really easy, because you just got to look to your left and right. There's somebody sitting right next to you that has to do the same thing.
My family. I was married when I joined the Marine Corps, and I was fortunate enough to be married when I left the Marine Corps too. So, like when training was bad, like it's just really hard, or like your pack gets really heavy. Just think about I just try to think about my family and like getting home to them. Like as much as like it would be bad at the time, like I knew like the bad times weren't gonna last forever. So like I tried to use that as like motivation to like push ahead and be like, well, it can only be bad for so long. Eventually it's going to get good. And then I'll be able to be with my family again or like see my cats or whatever. So I tried to use that as like motivation. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I'm a teacher now. I teach at Daleville. And I teach some freshmen and some seniors, and I try to share like my military experiences with the students just to give them like just a heads up, like, hey, like, not everyone goes to college or even goes to college right after high school. There's other options out there. So I try to like help them and just give them different ideas. And then if those that are interested in military service, I try to share my experiences with them and let them know what it's like or what's kind of in store for them. And like these are the things, like you got to have like this kind of personality if you want to join. Like if you're always getting in arguments, maybe it's not the best thing. You're going to be told what to do a lot, So like if you can't follow directions now, then I don't think you're going to be able to flip a switch in the military and just be able to follow directions immediately. So I try to like share my experiences with them and hopefully it has a positive impact or hopefully it motivates them.
Let's see. I think especially as a medic, I really got to make an impact on a lot of the people that I helped. So a lot of the soldiers and even the locals when I was in Afghanistan that would come in to be treated or that were sick or injured, just being there and giving them the best care and support that I could is the best way that I know that I made an impact on what I did, doing everything that I could to make sure that all of my friends came back home to their families also.
Okay. So the second half of my career, when I started to become more senior than the people below me, everyone goes through a moment in time where they don't want to be in the military anymore. They don't like it. They don't have to do this. They don't like being told what to do or decisions that are being made. Just being there and being a good mentor, helping them work through thought processes. I had one guy that he was having a very hard time staying physically fit to stay in the Air Force. You have to pass a test every year. And I signed up to run my first marathon with him to encourage him to actually keep training and pass the test. So I really enjoyed supporting people through physical fitness, staying in the military.
Just trying to do my best every day and tell them to keep going even during hard times.
So I am now, I am a sergeant right now in the Army, and I actually have people that I have under me. So I try to inspire them every day to work hard to get to the position that I'm in or even higher, so that their life is better as they get older and when they have a family.
Well, I've had a lot of people join because of how I put the military as its benefits. A lot of them wanted more opportunity to make friends, have somewhere to belong, or just to even go and have a new family and explore their options in higher education, like going to college and stuff. So that right there and explaining that to other people and how that helped you is always a good factor into motivating other people to join and inspiring them.
So I help and inspire people a lot. It's sort of more so my job now. In the Army, we have a big fancy word called retention. And as a command sergeant major of an aviation battalion, I have to make sure that my soldiers are happy, right? And so I'm constantly looking at ways that I can inspire them to stay in the Army, because where it's very hard to find. I think part of it's generational in recruiting. It's hard to get talent in, but then once you develop talent, if you teach somebody how to fix a helicopter, they can fix a helicopter anywhere. They don't have to do that in the Army, right? So when we get these trained up people that want to go live a different life and have a little bit more freedom of how they live, that's something that they generally will want to do. But what I do is try to create a family type atmosphere within the battalion. okay? If I figure I can make it feel like you're in a family, you guys would never leave your family, right? Not forever. I wouldn't. So I figure that if I can do that and create a good atmosphere where people are treated with respect and dignity, regardless of their rank or what have you, then we're going to retain more than what we otherwise would. So that's some of the things that I've done.
I think maybe just being a female in the military. When I was in, females only make up about 8% of the U.S. Army. It's a little bit higher now. And I wrote a lot of essays that I received awards for about being a female in the military, about how it's not really that much different than being a man in the military. And then a few years later, they opened up all of the jobs to females in the military, which is something that wasn't available when I was in. So I hope that I inspired some women to serve their country.
So being Air National Guard, I would be gone 1 week in a month, and I would have exercises that would be between 1 and 3 weeks long throughout the year. So being gone from family, you know, my kids and my wife, it was hard, but it was easy to get distracted because you're working, doing your job, and then when it's time to come home, then it's all the wonderful feelings. You finally get to see your family. You see I'm like getting choked up almost. Seeing them just run to you, be so excited to see you, and so proud of what you do. It was pretty awesome coming home every single day.
So yeah, so when I came back home, it was surreal because, you know, over there we don't have McDonald's, we don't have all the different stores, nothing like that. It's basically desert. There's sand everywhere, and it's just beige. So when you got home, you see all these different colors, you see, you know, trees and grass, and, you know, you get to go out to eat, you get to see your family and friends. So it was very surreal to come home from being over there.
Amazing. I got to eat real food and take a really, really hot shower and sleep in an actual bed and have 4 walls surrounding me. So it was pretty amazing.
I think that when you're a young adult, you get to a point where you feel like you don't need your family or your parents or your siblings very much. And you guys are just getting ready to come to that point in your life where that's going to be a big deal for you. You feel like you're finding your own way and you know how to do things on your own. And when you become a real adult, and you get out to go do something really big like that, that's a really hard thing for somebody who's so new, has such little experience of being an adult. When you have to deal with that, you don't realize how hard it is to do without the support of your family. So when you come home, you get to experience having your family back. The feeling is really, really good because for me especially, I didn't know how much I appreciated my family until they couldn't help me anymore. I had to do it by myself.
So I was deployed, and like coming home felt kind of weird. Like sounds kind of weird, but like I didn't ride like in a vehicle when I was deployed. Like the base was huge. Like it was as big as like all of Muncie essentially, and like we just walked everywhere. And like so I remember being like we flew into an airport when we finally got back to the U.S. and the plane ride was like 23 hours or something insane. And we finally got back and like we're taking a bus from the military air base to like my base Camp Pendleton where I was stationed. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, we're moving so fast on this bus. Like it was just like a school bus essentially, but like I hadn't been on a vehicle in so long. So like going on the expressway right away, I just remember thinking like we are flying right now. And like it's a bus, so they're probably doing like, you know, like 55 or something. But I remember that was like kind of a big like shock. Coming home from boot camp, like the first time, that was kind of interesting too. Um, like you just like everything you did was so controlled for so long. Like what you wore, like when you ate, like the speed that you moved, like when you spoke, like when you showered, like the way you made your bed, like literally every single aspect of your life was controlled. So like to leave that environment and then go home was like weird, like this sense of like I have freedom again, kind of. I don't know. It was interesting. And then like when I was stationed in California, I had family in Michigan, and so I'd like go visit them like around holidays and stuff, and that was always so cool, like to see family. Like I'd call them like my parents or my sister and stuff, periodically, but like to see them on holidays and stuff was always like pretty cool because I had friends that like who couldn't afford to go like go home like on holidays all the time. So like or like they couldn't get their leave approved. So I like knew like I was blessed because I could afford it. I was blessed because like my leave got approved and like I actually get to see my family and everything just worked out. So that was always a real special time too. I always tried to save it for like Thanksgiving or Christmas time.
Coming home is probably the hardest part of a deployment. The interaction coming from there to here, because there is that big cultural difference and then being in a certain mindset. So coming here is it was probably the hardest part. And then seeing family that you haven't seen in about a year. And so the interaction and the interchanging parts of that is very, very hard. But again, with love and support from everybody, it was a smooth transition.
It felt wonderful to finally come home. Again, you never really know what you have until you don't have it right in front of you. In Afghanistan, it's very, very hot in the summer. And in July, I left Afghanistan and it was about 120 or 130 degrees outside. So when I came home to the summer and it was only 80 degrees outside, it was amazing. But just getting back to being able to enjoy all of the things that I'd missed out on for a whole year. Getting to hug and meet new nieces and nephews that were born while I was away, and little things like taking my shoes off and walking through the grass because we didn't have grass in Afghanistan. So, for an entire year, I couldn't take off my socks and shoes and feel the grass under my feet. Or to take a bath. Over there, we could only take showers. So to be able to sit and take a bath, those feelings of being able to do something that you physically haven't been able to do in so long is just absolutely incredible and one of the best feelings ever.
Amazing. I got to eat real food and take a really, really hot shower and sleep in an actual bed and have 4 walls surrounding me. So it was pretty amazing.
It's just great to be back home and see the support we had from the local branches, the people, the grades, and see your family. There's no feeling like that.
Yeah. For me, like I said earlier, we typically do, when you're in the Navy, you do a 6-month deployment overseas, and then you come back home after 6 months. But when Iraqi Freedom started, we got extended and we were out for 9.5 months. So was one of the longest deployments in naval history. So when we came back, we actually got to, and you might be able to find this on the internet, but when we came back, President Bush, at the time, George W. Bush, he flew onto our aircraft carrier, and he was there for 3 days. So he came in and spoke to all of us, in a group, and then there's probably a picture out there on the internet from the Abraham Lincoln CVN-72 that has Mission Impossible on it, and with President Bush there, and then I was on that flight deck when that happened. So when we came back, like he was saying, the support from the local branches and from everybody back in the States was unbelievable, and there was just a very, very good sense of accomplishment, and welcoming home, of a job well done. So that's kind of what it was like. And then, you haven't seen your family in, over 9 months. So it was nice to get back home and get some leave and see some friendly faces. So.
experience where you're incredibly happy, and if you've ever been so happy you wanted to cry, that's what it is. I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah.
It's a pretty unique feeling. So.
Always feels good to come home. That's the easiest probably question I've gotten so far. It feels amazing. You haven't seen people in a very long time. That's a very special moment for anybody that deploys and is away from the people they love for a very long time. That stuff's hard, but always enjoyable to get back home and be with your family and friends, and that's why we do it. We don't do it for much about any other reason. So, but getting back and being with them is special. So. Big question. It's got a big answer. So when I graduated high school, for me personally, I didn't feel like I was ready for college. I didn't feel like I had the discipline. So the Army, the first thing that it gave me that was real important was discipline. It also gave me some money to go to college once I got out of the service on active duty. Now I've remained in the service for a very long time, but I've been in a part-time status with the National Guard since then. I was able to go to college, get the civilian career that I wanted. It's helped me financially. It's helped me just motivationally to be the person that I want to be and to do that kind of work. So it's a lot of fulfillment, fulfillment and reward. So that would be the best answer to that question.
I think the military made me a much stronger, and it made me more appreciative of the things that I have. I got to meet people from all over the world, and not only all over the world, but all over the United States. I have friends from Alaska and Washington and California, all the way down to Texas and Alabama and Hawaii, all the way up to Maine and Delaware and those states. So it really made that impact on me, is that I got to meet people from all walks of our United States to see how differently we are and our values are based on where we physically grow up. So that's probably the biggest impact, was getting to meet all of those different people and seeing all of those different things that they do compared to how we did things where I grew up.
The impact? Oh, wow. Great question. For me, it's helped me. Well, see, I was in over 20 years ago. So, so for me, it helped me when I was 18 to really start to understand attention to detail, listening to your superiors, and basically learning a lot of fundamentals about life outside of school and outside of your parents' house, right? So, and it helped me realize the importance of being on time and staying focused to a task that you are assigned to. So, be a few big things for me.
I agree with all that, actually. So at 18, I wasn't really quite sure what I wanted to do. I tried to go to college for a little while. Always wanted to join the military, so I took a little break from college and walked right into a recruiter's office the next day, and I was signed up for the Marine Corps 3 days later. So I kind of already knew what I wanted to do, and having done that, like you said, attention to detail, timeliness, respect, all those things are things that you learn really quickly, and they stick with you. So recognizing that working really hard pays off in the long run. It might sound like it's tedious and exhausting while you're doing it, but once the task is done, there's a lot of reward to it. So it makes you want to do well in everything you do.
It's been pretty much my whole life, because it's been about 7 years now. I'm 24 years old. So I joined right when I turned 17. But I'm a combat medic. So they gave me my my EMT. They paid me to do that. So now on the civilian side, I work for EMS. I work on an ambulance, and I do that, transporting behavioral health patients, teenagers and kids who need help. And I take them to facilities and providing that care and love for them.
I am now currently a mother of 2 little boys, and I live my best life basically just through the Army. So it's impacted my life a lot.
Muncie, I probably would have never seen Guam, Spain, Italy, Bahrain for sure. So in that aspect, yes, I got to experience a lot of different cultures. I'm a police officer now, so it's kind of funny because I can relate to everybody says they have it tough until you actually go to different countries and see how they live. So kind of just puts a perspective on everything.
I think the biggest thing is that I went to Afghanistan and I saw how differently people lived and how differently people were treated, especially women. And it just helped me gain a greater appreciation for the freedoms that we have here in America.
I was like probably a D student at best in high school. I was not a good student. I was the one that was always getting in trouble, the one that was always getting kicked out of class. Teachers tell me I was never going to graduate. Like it was probably a miracle that I did graduate high school. And then I somehow managed to like get through college. I never got good grades the first time or anything. And then after I left the Marine Corps in 2015, I left the Marine Corps. I decided to go to college, and at that point, I was like a straight A student. I graduated Ball State with honors, and I have a master's degree now. And like my attitude towards like doing things and like academics and just everything just changed so much. Like I went from like not really caring about anything to like being hyper motivated. And like if I didn't get an A in a class, then to me that was a failure. Like I wanted to experience success, and I worked really, really hard at it. Academically, it definitely changed me. Like I was a struggling student in high school, and I graduated college with honors and have a master's degree now. And like if I could go back and see some, like I went to a really big high school, and I don't really talk to anyone from there anymore. But if like I could see some of my teachers and like, or they would see me now, I guess, or some of my friends from high school, they probably wouldn't even believe I was the same person. Huge impact on my life.
Definitely a positive impact. I feel like it has helped me really appreciate the importance of working with those around us, even if we don't agree with them, to be good they're called wingmen in the Air Force. Just being a part of something more important than ourselves. It has really helped me grow as a person and appreciate the whole human race and not just myself.
Probably discipline and respect.
I think the biggest thing is that I went to Afghanistan and I saw how differently people lived and how differently people were treated, especially women. And it just helped me gain a greater appreciation for the freedoms that we have here in America.
Oh man. Again, I'd have to go back to the discipline, because I don't think I go very far in life without it. I wasn't a broken person. I wasn't somebody that came out of high school that had a lot of bad habits. Okay. You hear about people that do come out of high school with bad habits. I wasn't that person, but I wasn't necessarily motivated or on a direct path for success. And so I think that's what it gave me. And I think that's why I clung to it and continued my career part-time, because I felt like I'd gotten a little bit good at it, and I was able to continue helping our force and helping our country in that manner. But yeah.
Yeah. The military has taught me a lot of really valuable lessons. Loyalty, duty, respect, honor, integrity, selfless service. The list goes on and on. There are so many things that the military really instills in its soldiers, and those are some of the big ones. But loyalty is probably the biggest one for me. You know, I go 110% at everything I do because I want to show my loyalty to my friends, to my family, to my work, to my patients now, and to everything that I commit myself to. I want to give everything that I can to those commitments.
To recognize how good we have it here in this country. So the military gave me the opportunity to see what it would be like if I wasn't in control of my own decisions and I had to have somebody else tell me everything. When you're in the military, it's kind of like we joke about it being like jail because you don't get to do whatever you want. Somebody else is always in charge and tells you where to go and what to do. And it has to be that way because it has to be very structured when you're in the military, because if you're at war, you have to know exactly what you're supposed to do and when you're supposed to do it. But not just that, when you're in the military and you go to another country that's a third world country, which is where most wars are, you gain a really big appreciation for how easy we have it in the United States in general. Everybody has a hard life at one time or another, and there's different reasons that your life feels hard. But generally speaking, there's no other country in the world that has it as good as we do. So that was the biggest thing that the military taught me, is how grateful I should be, even if I don't agree with the way that my country runs all the time. I should be very grateful for the life that our society and the way our government works has given me. I was 20 years old, and I was dealing with 40 and 50 and 60-year-old people that had never seen grass. There are people that were 3 times my age, had lived for 60 years, looking at a 20-year-old and saying, "Can you teach me something?" Because they never had the chance to learn. They just lived their lives every day. They never got to go to school. They never got to do anything because they had to work on a farm, or they had to work on, for their parents, doing something to help them because their country was that poor, and their leader, their dictator, took such advantage of them. So when you go to another country and kids your age would come up to me and say, and I was barely smart enough to be teaching them anything, they would say, "Can you tell me what grass is like?" Because they'd never seen grass, and they probably never would. For us, that seems like such a weird, common thing. Like, we all know what grass feels like, right? We all know what it looks like. We all know what it smells like when it's cut. But some kids in other cultures and other countries that live in the desert will never get to see or experience grass. And that's such an easy one for me, because we don't even think about that, do we? We don't think about what a neat thing grass is and how special it is that we live in a place where grass just grows. That's the first sign that your land is healthy and that you have water. And for a lot of different cultures and different countries, they base what makes them happy off of a lot more simple things than we do, because they can't even appreciate things like grass.
It seems kind of strict and bossy, and yeah, it's not very fun. But when you have structure built into your life, it creates a lot of opportunity and to be organized and lay everything out
It's
for you.
just to push forward. There's going to be bad days, there's going to be good days, but on those bad days, you keep pushing because you'll get to that good day.
The lesson is we are not as important individually as we are as a group, as one team, being able to not be selfish and be selfless, that would be the thing that I would say.
Made it worth it. Is it always enjoyable? Absolutely not. But I felt like I was making a difference, and it's like for the rest of my life, I can say I'm a United States Marine, and no one can ever take that away from me. So that's pretty cool.